We will be discussing the draft regulatory provider bulletin titled Paper-Based Application Process for Medi-Cal Provider Enrollment when Online System is Unavailable. Please note, the purpose of the hearing is solely to discuss this bulletin. Questions related to billing, rates, or managed care will not be addressed during the hearing. For inquiries unrelated to the bulletin updates, please email dhcsPED stakeholder@dhcs.ca.gov. Now we'll go over to Alejandro to go over the agenda, reminder, and the bulletin.
Thank you, Gabe. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alejandro Lara, and I am an analyst for the policy unit in the Provider Enrollment Division. Now I will go over the agenda, reminders, and bulletin. The purpose of today's hearing is to provide you with an opportunity for discussion of the draft provider bulletin. For our agenda today, we will go over some reminders, then we will provide a bulletin overview and review the updated Medi-Cal requirements. Lastly, we will end with comments and questions. Before we begin, I have a few quick reminders. If you are experiencing any technical issues, please email DHCS PED stakeholder at dhcs.ca.gov for assistance. Please hold all comments and questions until the end of the presentation. We will have plenty of time for comments and questions at the end. Please be sure to send any questions or comments made in the chat box to everyone. We will discuss this in further detail at the end of the presentation. Only written comments received by email by 5 p.m. today will be considered prior to the publication of the final bulletin. You may send your written comments to the following email address: dhcsped stakeholder at dhcs.ca.gov. When submitting your comments, please make sure you reference your name, organization, if you are affiliated with one, and the bulletin title. This hearing will be recorded and posted on our stakeholder hearing information webpage for future reference at a later date. We will provide a link to that webpage in the chat now. Now we will go over the bulletin. DHCS is making supplemental updates to the requirements for Medi-Cal provider enrollment application submission methods. In accordance with Welfare and Institutions Code, or W&I Code, Section 14043.75b, the DHCS Director has established revised application requirements and procedures. These requirements implement and make specific W&I Code Sections 14043.15, 14043.25 through 0.29, and 14043.38, and as such, have the full force and effect of law. As a reminder, the draft provider bulletin was attached in the stakeholder hearing invitation email that was sent on February 10th, 2026. It can also be found on our stakeholder hearing information webpage, which we will provide a link in the chat now. This bulletin supplements all previously issued bulletins that require exclusive use of the online Medi-Cal enrollment application system. DHCS will continue to mandate electronic submission through the online system as the standard process. However, in the event of a system-wide outage or service disruption, providers are required to submit all enrollment applications, enrollment updates, including changes of business address, changes of ownership, revalidations, and supplemental additions or changes to enrollment information as described in California Code of Regulations, Title 22, Section 51,000.40, using the designated paper-based process outlined herein. Now we will go over the updated Medi-Cal requirement. Effective April 1st, 2026, If the online Medi-Cal enrollment application system experiences a system-wide outage or service disruption, providers must submit all enrollment applications, enrollment updates, and supplemental additions or changes to enrollment using paper forms as directed by DHCS. During such outages, these paper forms will serve as the official and legally required method for completing the Medi-Cal provider application process. If the online Medi-Cal enrollment application system experiences a system-wide outage or service disruption, DHCS will publish an informational bulletin directing providers to use paper application forms. The paper form application process will remain in effect until DHCS rescinds the informational bulletin that triggered the implementation of this bulletin. How to access the required forms. Providers can find the required forms they need by going to the Medi-Cal Provider Enrollment Forms webpage and selecting Provider Enrollment from the drop-down menu. Applicants are required to complete the appropriate DHCS forms for their provider type and any applicable required supporting documents. How to submit the required forms. Providers are required to complete all the required fields, including signatures, and submit the forms following the instructions provided on the DHCS paper form. The informational bulletin that will implement this bulletin will specify the required submission methods, which may include traditional mail and/or electronic options, such as email or other secure digital submission methods, as specified by DHCS. Now I will pass it to Katie for the comments and questions portion of the hearing.
All right, thank you, Alejandro. Thank you for listening to our presentation about the regulatory bulletin titled Paper-Based Application Process for Medi-Cal Provider Enrollment when Online System is Unavailable. If you would like to share a comment or ask a question, you may either raise your virtual hand or type it in the chat box. If you're typing your question in the chat box, make sure you put it for everyone so everyone can see it. I'm going to go through the chat box first, and then if you would like to raise your virtual hand and ask a question verbally, we will unmute you. And then as a reminder, the purpose of today's hearing is solely to discuss this bulletin. Questions related to billing, rates, or managed care will not be addressed now. But if you do have inquiries about those items, you can please send those inquiries to DHCS PED stakeholder at dhcs.ca.gov, and we will either respond or forward your inquiry to the appropriate division. All right, so I'm checking the chat box now. I don't see any questions. I'm gonna kind of wait and linger for a minute. No questions or comments. All right, Anne, do you see any hands raised?
I do not see any hands raised, but looks like we do have a question in the chat now.
Awesome. Okay, so one, are there any expectations for the Medi-Cal online system to be offline soon? There are not. We are just establishing the use of paper-based forms as a legal and valid method if the system were down. So this is more a contingency, and there's not an expectation that this would happen. Let's see, Elizabeth, she's asking to repeat the email address. Okay, I'll repeat it verbally. I'm assuming you can't, oh, well, you can see the chat box and it's there, but it's DHCS PED stakeholder at dhcs.ca.gov. Okay, so another question from Alameda Health System. Is there a sample of the paper form that will be required so that we may become familiar with it? So if you navigate to the Medi-Cal Provider Enrollment Forms webpage and then go under, let's see, there's topics and then provider enrollment, you can see some of the existing forms that are already there. I will say that all of the forms are not on there. We don't have them published currently, but they will be if this goes into place. I will also say that these forms are really going to mirror exactly what is in the online enrollment system now. It will be the same information that we're collecting to give you reference. Okay, next question. If the online system page portal is down, how long can we normally expect it for it to be down? I don't have an answer for how long it would potentially be down. I will say it hasn't, we haven't experienced an outage thus far, and we've had it since 2016. So we're just establishing a legally alternative method if it does go down. Okay, next question. For the DMC ODS Medi-Cal portal, do we submit changes as they occur on that site as that happens, e.g. new staff? I'm not familiar with them. I'm not sure if you're talking about a separate enrollment, but for for DMC, you would submit changes on the paper form if we instruct you to do so, and instructions for that would be on that paper-based forms webpage. Okay, Martin Gutierrez is asking, will this be applicable for provider revalidation requests in the event the system is down? Yes, it will be, and please note that you will be notified by us to submit revalidation application, so don't assume that you need to submit one. We will let you know if you need to. But yes, if you were identified as a provider that needed revalidation, you would submit that via paper if that was the method at that time. Which form would we use for an ORT provider? There's a specific form for ordering, referring, prescribing providers. It's not currently published on the website, but if this was to go into place and we did require paper-based forms, that form would be on there, and there would be clear instructions that that would be the form you would use for that enrollment type. Okay, next question is, who do we reach out to get enrolled with the Medi-Cal provider portal? We just recently got credentialed. So if you send an email to DHCS PED stakeholder at dhcs.gov, we can give you information on how to do that. Okay, next question. Can you show us where to get this form if the system was down? Yes, I can tell you. So it's on the Medi-Cal Provider Enrollment Forms webpage. So if you go on the DHCS or Medi-Cal webpage, there's two websites, and search for Medi-Cal Provider Enrollment Forms, it will come up there as well. Okay, next question. Can you repeat the step on how to find the paper application online? Yes. And yes, we will share this presentation. It will be on, let's see, we will send it through the stakeholder listserv. So we'll attach that along with the frequently asked questions document to an email via listserv. In order to access the forms, you need to navigate to the Medi-Cal Provider Enrollment Forms webpage, and then under Topics, you'll select Provider Enrollment. Okay. Next question. For ABA providers, what URL do we use to become in network with Medi-Cal? We have been told that ABA providers can't submit applications through PAVE portal. Where can we find an application online? So ABA providers may enroll through PAVE. If you, Lori, would like to submit an email to DHCS PED stakeholder at dhcs.ca.gov, I would be happy to provide information on the link to where you would enroll for that provider type. Just so you know, in case you haven't been able to locate info, ABA providers are called Qualified Autism Service Providers for Medi-Cal purposes. So there, you may have not seen that provider type listed there. So I wanted to highlight that. Okay, next question is, will an email be sent out when this goes into effect and forms are published, or do we have to follow up with the website? So Monica, yes, an email will go out. It will go out in the same way that the notification for this hearing went out on the listserv. So if you're not signed up for the listserv, I highly recommend that you do that. For my staff, I added that to our document with info with the links. And so could someone please post that link in there? Actually, I might have that. Sorry, give me just a second. Okay, I can't find it, but staff, can you please post where folks can sign up for the listserv in the chat? Okay, next question. Let's see. Also, so an email will be sent out. Additionally, we will give directions on where the forms are published. They're on, I already went over, they're on the Medi-Cal forms webpage. So that's where you would find them. Additionally, there will be also information posted on our web page for provider enrollment on that landing page. Okay, so next question. If we go to PAVE and see that the website is down, will there be instruction there on next steps for how to complete via paper? Yes. We will also have information on that landing page. So if you go to that page to enroll, there will be instructions indicating the system is currently down and how to submit paper applications in its place. So there will be the listserv with an informational bulletin outlining how, when, and then also there will be info on the PAVE landing page. Okay, next question. Is there only questions about paper? Is there no presentation showing us these next steps? No, there is currently not a presentation showing next steps because this is, we're just establishing paper-based forms as a contingency if the system is down. We are continuing to mandate currently that applications be submitted electronically through our online enrollment system. So that's why there are not additional instructions for how this will be done. However, in the event that we do publish a bulletin triggering use of paper-based applications, we will provide additional information for how to do that at that time. Okay, so Eric Gonzalez is asking, what is the estimated time frame to finalize enrollments when submitting paper applications as opposed to submitting in PAVE? So regardless of whether we are reviewing or you are submitting applications in online or via PAVE, we have statutory time frame review requirements for providers, regardless of how the application is submitted. And so legally, we're required to provide a response and take an action on an application for physicians in 90 days or less. And then for all other allied providers, it's 180 days. And this is outlined in the Welfare and Institutions Code. And then the other part of your question was, additionally, will the application status updates be visible in PAVE if the application was submitted via paper, or should status inquiries be directed to the stakeholder email address? That's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. So if you are submitting an application in paper, there are two ways that you could get a hold of PED to ask questions. The first is the online inquiry form. I'm not sure if my staff have a link to that, but if you could put a link in the chat to that, that would be great. The second would be reaching out to DHCS PED stakeholder at dhcs.ca.gov. Either way, that would be how you would get inquire about a paper-based application. Okay, next is from Paula Lee. If a provider sent a paper application, will the provider need to enroll online once the system is up? No. So you will not be required to then submit another application via the online enrollment system. We will create a record in the provider master file, regardless of whether an application is submitted by paper or PAVE. So no, you would not have to submit another application. Lori is saying, hi, I've been told home health and hospice does not use PAVE. Is there a portal for us to use? Those providers are enrolled through the California Department of Public Health Licensing and Certification Division. I don't have a link to that handy right now, but if you'd like to reach out to our email address, I'd be happy to provide further information for that. Claudia is asking, will it be mandatory in the future to submit Medi-Cal applications only online? So it's currently mandatory to submit applications online, and the intent is to continue that unless for some reason the system is down. Elizabeth Castor is asking, kindly would you please share the first notes and info from Alejandra? Yes, so we will share a recorded video of this presentation as well as the PowerPoint for you to refer to as well. Oh, thank you, Gabe. Gabe added the listserv sign up. So if folks need to sign up for the listserv, that's in the chat. Next question is, oh, and it looks like Spencer already responded, but I'll just say it verbally. So this is only if the system PAVE happens to be down. You are not changing to paper applications only, right? Correct, Sierra, that is correct. Oh, this is only if the system is down. You are to continue submitting via our online enrollment system or PAVE until we direct otherwise by an informational bulletin. Okay, so will the paper applications accept DocuSign or will they require a wet signature? So there will be instructions on this on the paper application. So I would defer to that. If you are told to submit a paper application, there will be very clear directions on the validity of signatures and signature types. All right, are there any? Let's see, I don't see any more questions in the chat at this time. Any hands raised? Still, I don't think I see any. Okay, still a couple more questions trickling in. Okay, if we resubmitted an application with the corrections, how long until a response is received? Yeah, that's a great question. So the department has 60 days to return a decision when you resubmit an application with corrections. And that's again for paper or PAVE. So it's the same for either method. Let's see, are there any? I don't see any other questions. I'm kind of waiting. All great questions. I really appreciate them. No. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'm going to go over my just additional reminders. So for any questions that we didn't answer, please send us an email and we will work on getting you the information you may need. Oh, we got one more question. I'm going to answer that too. There are forms need to be notarized. Do we need to submit the original or is a copy sufficient? You would need to submit the original with a wet signature. Let's see. Are there any trainings offered to providers once approved to become Medi-Cal? Yes, there are trainings. So you can go to the Medi-Cal provider webpage and there's a portal for enrolled providers that provides training on billing and all kinds of stuff. So I recommend going to the Medi-Cal provider portal. It's on the Medi-Cal webpage. Where do we send the paper applications? So there will be instructions on the forms themselves as well as the informational bulletin. It would either be through mail or a secure electronic process. However, I don't have specifics on how that will be at that time. However, we will if this process is put into place. So I would refer to the paper form and the bulletin that we would issue if we do end up having to use paper apps for a system-wide outage. Okay, just kind of waiting to see if we get any other questions. Oh, thank you, Spencer. Spencer added the link to the Medi-Cal provider portal. Thank you, that's helpful. Okay, so as reminders, all comments, feedback, and or comments that we received or must be emailed today by 5 p.m. for consideration prior to final publication of the bulletin. Please make sure you reference your name and organization if you're affiliated with one and commenting on the bulletin. I'm going to leave the chat open for the next few minutes so folks can copy any of the links. I think we got, did we get, nope, that was just staff adding additional information. So if there are no other questions, that is the conclusion of the hearing, and we appreciate your attendance and participation. Thank you.